Helen's knuckles turned white around the phone. For a moment, I thought of all the Father's Days past, hand-drawn cards with crooked hearts, breakfasts burned but proudly served, little arms around my neck. And now this, a box that breathed, hissing in my living room. When the sirens wailed in the distance, one thought cut deeper than fear. How could love twist into something this cruel? It was light. Too light. The cardboard edges were worn, as though someone had been careless, or deliberate. I carried it inside, already uneasy. Helen, my wife, glanced at it while drying her hands on a towel. Her brow furrowed immediately. "Don't open it," she said sharply, almost a whisper, but firm enough that it stopped me cold. I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? It's just a package." "Look closer." She pointed to the top edges, and that's when I saw them. Tiny punctures, evenly spaced, deliberate. Breathing holes. My hand tightened around the box. A low scratching sound rose from inside, quick, frantic, alive. Then, silence. My chest tightened as the weight of the moment hit me. Someone had sent me something alive, trapped, suffering, and now resting on my coffee table like a time bomb. Helen's voice was tense. "William, call the police." I wanted to believe it was nothing. A prank, a mistake, a wrong address. But the label had my name, my exact address, written clean and precise. This wasn't an accident. It was meant for me. And in that instant, though I didn't want to admit it, I knew exactly who had sent it. Michael, my only son, the man I'd carried on my shoulders at the county fair, the boy who once made me Father's Day cards with stick figures and glitter, the same boy who now saw me not as a father, but as a walking wallet. 6 nights earlier, he had stormed out of my house, shouting about inheritance, about how I was hoarding money while he drowned in debt. He left the front door rattling on its hinges, and a silence so sharp it cut through the air. Now, 6 days later, this box sat in front of me. A coincidence? No. A message. His message. The scratching started again, louder this time. A squeak followed. Helen stumbled back, her face pale. I dialed. 911. We have a package at our house. No return address. Something's alive inside. It's making sounds. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but my own cracked. Holes in the box, I said. Breathing holes. Stay away from it, sir. Officers are on their way. 10 minutes. That's what she told me. 10 minutes until help arrived. But 10 minutes felt like an eternity while something clawed inside that box, while every possibility I didn't want to consider raced through my mind. A snake? A rat? Something worse? Helen gripped my arm so hard her nails dug through my shirt. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why would someone do this?" But she didn't say the name. Neither of us did. Because once you said it out loud, it became real. I wanted to cling to doubt. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe some neighborhood kid was playing a prank. But Michael wasn't just any son. He was the son who called me names in my own dining room. The son who demanded his inheritance early, as though my death was a transaction he was tired of waiting for. The son who told me straight to my face, "You don't understand, Dad. I need it now, not when you're gone." I could still hear the echo of his voice from that night, still see the look in his eyes, cold, calculating, resentful. Now here was this box, on the one day meant to honor fathers, taunting me from the center of my living room. The scratching stopped again. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Helen stepped back further. I stayed frozen, staring at the box like it might sprout legs. I remembered the sacrifices, the boat I sold, the trip Helen and I canceled, Years of checks written in silence, mistaking fear for love. Fear of losing him. Fear of losing my grandchildren. Fear of being called a selfish father. Every memory of sacrifice played in my head while the box sat there, mocking me. Then came the sound that broke me, a hiss, long and deliberate, seeping out of the cardboard as though whatever was inside was done hiding. Helen gasped. I grabbed her hand. My heart slammed against my ribs. That's when I realized the box wasn't just a package. It was the truth, disguised in cardboard and tape. Michael had crossed a line, and I had to decide, right there in my living room, whether I would keep living as his hostage or finally take my life back. The sirens in the distance grew louder. The house felt smaller with every second. Helen's grip tightened, and all I could think was, how did we get here? How did the boy who once made me hand-drawn cards turn into the man who sent me this? Before the police stepped through my front door, before the box was opened, I already knew this Father's Day would change everything. Forever. Michael had a way of turning every room into a battlefield. He didn't raise his voice right away. He'd sit there, lounging back like he owned the place, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, waiting until the silence felt unbearable. Then, with one line, he'd shatter it. That night, it was at my dinner table. Helen had roasted chicken, the kind of meal she still put care into, even when the atmosphere in the house was heavy. I'd barely picked up my fork when Michael leaned forward, his tone casual, but his words sharp. So, Dad, how much longer are you going to make me wait? You've got more than enough saved. Why not give me some now? The fork clattered against my plate. Helen froze, her hand tight around her napkin. Lena, his wife, crossed her legs and smirked like she was watching a performance she'd seen 100 times. It's called inheritance for a reason, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. You get it when I'm gone. That's the deal. Michael's smirk vanished. His voice cracked like a whip. That's the deal? No, Dad, that's your deal. I need it now. Not when you're 6 feet under. The air left the room. Helen's face drained of color. I felt the muscles in my jaw lock. I wanted to believe I'd misheard him, but his glare told me otherwise. I tried to deflect. You've had jobs, Michael. You've had opportunities. Where's your money? His laugh was hollow, bitter. Opportunities? You mean those dead-end jobs that don't pay enough to cover groceries? You sit on hundreds of thousands, and I'm drowning in debt. Lena cut in smoothly, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Will, you could make this all go away. Just a little help. What's a few thousand compared to your son's future? Her words twisted like a knife. A few thousand? That was the boat I sold, the trip Helen and I canceled, the mortgage I covered. Years of sacrifice stacked into resentment I never dared name. But now, staring at the man across from me, the man who called me selfish while wearing a brand new watch on his wrist, I realized that day was never coming. Michael, I said, voice low but steady, your debt is your choice. Every time you gambled, every time you bought something you couldn't afford, you chose this. His eyes flashed. He slammed his fist on the table so hard the silverware jumped. Don't talk to me about choices. You don't understand what it's like to struggle. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I worked 12-hour shifts for 40 years. I missed dinners, birthdays, vacations. You never knew what it was like to struggle because I made sure you didn't. Don't you dare stand there and tell me I don't understand. The words cracked the air like thunder. For a moment, even Michael seemed stunned. Then came the sneer. You like this, don't you? Watching me beg. Makes you feel powerful. That accusation hit harder than any insult. Begging? I thought of all the times I'd said yes, all the times I'd given until it hurt. If he thought this was me enjoying power, he had no idea what power looked like. Helen finally broke, her voice trembling as she tried to stop the avalanche. Please, both of you, this isn't helping. We're family. We can talk about this calmly. Calmly? Michael turned on her like a predator. He's hoarding money while we scrape by. Do you know what that feels like? Helen's hands shook as she wrung her napkin. Her eyes darted to mine, silently begging me to fix it. But there was no fixing this. Not anymore. The tension snapped when Michael's hand lashed out. He grabbed his coffee mug, slammed it against the table, and it shattered. Brown liquid spraying across Helen's tablecloth, dripping down to the Persian rug we'd bought on our 20th anniversary. Helen cried out as shards scattered across the floor. I stood slowly, my knees aching with the effort, but my voice carried steel. Enough. This isn't your bank, Michael. This isn't your inheritance to demand. This is my house, my money, my life's work. He shot to his feet, his face twisted with rage. Then maybe you should enjoy it while you can, old man. Because one day, whether you like it or not, it'll all be mine. That was the moment. The moment I realized he didn't just want help. He wanted control. He wanted me gone. The fight ended with him storming out, Lena at his side, her heels clicking against the hardwood like gunshots. The front door slammed so violently, the family portrait on the mantel fell forward, face down. I picked it up later, brushing coffee stains off the glass. It was Michael at 10 years old, grinning in his Little League uniform, his arm slung around my neck. The boy who once wanted nothing more than to make me proud was gone. In his place stood a man who saw me as a stepping stone to a lifestyle he refused to earn. Helen stood in the doorway, tears streaking her face. William, what's happening to him? I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. He wasn't changing. He was showing me who he had become. And the only question left was whether I would keep playing the part he'd written for me, the part of the father who always gave in, or whether I would finally break the script. That night, the silence in the house was deafening. Helen moved through the kitchen like a ghost, cleaning shards of glass, wiping stains, trying to erase the chaos. But the words hung in the air, impossible to scrub away. Why wait until you're dead? The words of my son, the man I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed for. And now, the man who was slowly strangling the life out of me, one demand at a time. As I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I knew something had shifted. Father's Day was only days away, and I could feel it coming. The storm that would finally break us. The police arrived with the kind of speed that tells you they've seen this before. 2 officers stepped into my living room, their radios crackling, eyes fixed on the box sitting dead center on the coffee table. Helen and I stood back like statues. One officer slipped on latex gloves, crouched low, and tilted his head to listen. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Then it came again. The scratching, frantic, sharp, followed by a squeal that made Helen's hand clamp down on my arm. The officer straightened. Something's alive in there. His voice was calm, but I saw his jaw tighten. He motioned to his partner, who carefully lifted the lid. The cardboard creaked. And then, chaos. A large, filthy rat exploded out of the box, claws skittering across the table before it was snatched up with practiced hands and shoved into a secure cage. The sound of it thrashing inside the plastic container made Helen stagger backward. I just stood there, my breath frozen in my chest. A rat. That was my Father's Day gift. Harmless, the officer said, though his eyes flicked between Helen's pale face and my clenched fists. But deliberate. Someone wanted to scare you. Deliberate. That word burned through me. This wasn't a prank. It was a message. The officer pulled out his notepad. Do you have any idea who might have sent this? My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I couldn't bring myself to say his name. My son. My only son. But I didn't need to. Fate said it for me. The officer flipped the box over, examining the shipping label. Ordered online, paid with a credit card ending in... He read off the last 4 digits, and my stomach dropped. It was my card. The one Michael had access to. The one he'd promised he only used for emergencies. Helen gasped. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The officer kept talking, but I barely heard him. All I could hear was the echo of Michael's voice at that dinner table. Why should I wait until you're dead? Give me my inheritance now. And now this, sending me vermin, on Father's Day, using my own money to do it. I sank into my chair, the weight of years pressing down all at once. For decades I had excused him, rationalized every lie, every crisis. I told myself he was struggling, that a father's job was to protect, to provide. But there, on my coffee table, in a cage rattling with claws and squeals, was the truth I had refused to see. Michael didn't just want my help. He wanted my humiliation. The officers left, taking the rat with them, promising to file a report. The front door closed, and silence swallowed the house. Helen sat across from me, her hands trembling in her lap. William, she whispered. It was him, wasn't it? I couldn't answer. Saying it aloud would make it final. But she saw it in my eyes. She always did. That night, I sat alone in my office, the glow of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the stacks of papers I'd collected over the years. Bank statements, loan agreements, receipts with his name scrawled across them. Each one was a reminder of how far I'd gone to keep him afloat. The pawned watch, the loans I co-signed, the endless emergencies. It was never survival. It was war. I picked up one of the old statements, the ink smudged from where my thumb had pressed too hard. 35 years of enabling, staring back at me in black and white. And for what? So that on Father's Day, my only son would send me a rat in a box. I looked around my office. On the shelf sat a framed photo of Michael at 8 years old, holding up a homemade card. The letters were uneven, the glitter smeared, but it was clear. To the best dad. My throat tightened. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man who thought cruelty was currency, that threats could buy loyalty. The scratching inside the box had been a sound I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the noise of a trapped animal. It was the sound of years of silence breaking open. Every sacrifice I had buried, every compromise I had made, every time I had swallowed my pride, it was all clawing its way out. And for the first time in decades, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about love anymore. This was about survival. Helen stepped into the doorway, her eyes red from crying. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I stared at the pile of receipts, the credit card statements, the legal documents that had once been my safety net. My voice came out low, steady. "I'm going to stop this." Stop what? Being his bank, being his hostage, being the fool who thinks love means writing checks. Helen covered her mouth, her body shaking with silent sobs. She knew. She'd always known this day would come. But the reality of it was almost too much to bear. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the lamp casting everything in harsh light. Tomorrow, I would shut the door Michael had been walking through his entire adult life. Tomorrow, the man who thought he could control me with fear would find the door locked. The rat was supposed to scare me. Instead, it woke me up. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not because the problem was solved, it wasn't, but because I finally knew the truth. And once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. I closed the folder of receipts and leaned forward, pressing my hands flat against the desk. My heart was still pounding, but the fear was gone. In its place was resolve. Michael thought the box was a message. He was right, but not the one he intended. It was my turning point. The day I stopped being afraid of losing him and started being afraid of losing myself. The next morning, I sat at my desk before the sun even rose, the glow of the computer screen the only light in the room. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For years they had typed numbers into boxes that funneled money straight into Michael's life. Transfers labeled rent, utilities, emergency. Every keystroke had been a lifeline he believed he was entitled to. But today, those same hands trembled with a different purpose. The cursor blinked, waiting. I opened the banking portal, typed in the password, and for the first time in decades, I didn't hesitate. One click removed Michael as an authorized user on my credit card. Another canceled the recurring transfers to his account. A third changed the PIN numbers he'd memorized. Each confirmation screen felt like a chain snapping free from around my throat. When it was done, I leaned back, staring at the words, "Changes confirmed." 30 years of financial bleeding cauterized in 30 minutes. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt lighter, stronger. My phone buzzed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. "Dad, what the hell? My card isn't working. I'm at the store with a cart of groceries and it just declined." His voice was sharp, frantic. "It won't work again," I said, steady. "What are you talking about?" "I cut you off. No more money, Michael. Not now, not ever." There was silence, the kind that stretches like a wire about to snap. Then came the laugh, cold, dismissive. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." "You sent me a rat in a box," I said flatly. "You can't prove that." "I don't need to. I know." The laugh vanished. His voice dropped into something darker. "You'll regret this, old man. You'll never see Emma and Lucas again." For years, that threat would have gutted me. It had kept me compliant, my love for my grandchildren twisted into a weapon. But now, the words rang hollow. "If you use your children as bargaining chips, Michael," I said, voice low, unshaken, "then maybe it's better they don't learn that kind of poison from you." He swore, shouted, then hung up. My hands didn't even shake. By evening, the calm shattered with the roar of an engine in the driveway. Headlights blazed through the curtains. A door slammed hard. Then another. Heavy footsteps pounded across the porch. Helen looked up from the kitchen, her hands frozen mid-air over the dishes. Fear flickered in her eyes, but there was something else, too, a quiet resolve, as if she was bracing for a storm she knew had to break. "Stay here," I told her, though she shook her head, lips pressed tight. She wasn't just afraid anymore. She was watching to see if I would finally stand my ground. The pounding at the door rattled the frame. "Open up, Dad!" Michael's voice, raw with fury. I opened it. He stood there, chest heaving, Lena right behind him, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp with contempt. "You think you can just cut me off?" Michael shoved past me, storming into the living room without permission. "Family doesn't do that." I closed the door behind them, the sound sharp, final. "Family doesn't send rats in boxes." His face reddened. "That was nothing. A joke, for God's sake." And you're blowing it up like it's a crime? It was a crime, I said, and so was every time you stole from me and called it borrowing. You're supposed to help me. His voice cracked, desperation slipping through the anger. You've got more than you'll ever need, and I'm drowning here. I stepped closer, my voice hard. I worked for every cent of it. You gamble, you spend, you demand. That isn't drowning. That's jumping in the water with rocks in your pockets. Lena sneered, finally speaking. You're pathetic. What kind of father refuses his own son? What kind of man lets his grandchildren suffer just to sit on a pile of money? Don't you dare, I snapped, my finger pointed like a blade. Don't you dare use those kids as your shield. Their suffering is the story you tell while you buy watches, sneakers, vacations you can't afford. Don't bring Emma and Lucas into this. The silence that followed was electric, every breath sharp enough to cut. Then Michael lunged forward, his face inches from mine. We know where you live. We know your routines. You really think you can just cut us off and walk away? Helen gasped behind me, but I didn't flinch. Are you threatening me? I'm saying you better think twice. No, I said, my voice ice. I've already thought more than enough. You're finished. The account's closed. The door is closed. You have no power here anymore. Michael's eyes darted, wild, searching for the old father he could manipulate. But he didn't find him. You'll regret this, he spat. Maybe, I said, but not as much as I'd regret spending the rest of my life as your hostage. For a moment, the weight of my words stunned him. Then he turned sharply, storming back to the door. Lena followed, but not before sneering, You're a fool. He's your son. You can't just erase that. I opened the door wide, gesturing to the dark night outside. Watch me. They left with screeching tires, the sound fading into the distance. I closed the door gently this time, the brass handle cool under my palm. My hands didn't shake. My voice hadn't cracked. For the first time in years, I had stood tall in my own home. Helen stepped beside me, tears glistening in her eyes, but not from fear, from pride. William, she whispered, you did it. I looked at her, at the woman who had stood beside me through every storm, and felt the truth settle deep inside. I had broken free. The rat hadn't been the end of the story. It had been the beginning of something else entirely. A father reclaiming his life. A man drawing a line so sharp it could never be erased. And I knew, standing there in the quiet aftermath, that Michael would come back. That he would try again. That he would push, threaten, plead. But next time, I wouldn't bend. Because once you've broken free, you can't go back to the cage. 2 days after I shut the door in Michael's face, I was sitting across from Ms. Roberts, our attorney. Her office smelled faintly of leather and old paper, the kind of place where decisions become permanent. She listened as I laid everything out, the inheritance fight, the rat in the box, the confrontation in my living room. I half expected her to flinch, to ask if I was exaggerating, but she just nodded, calm, professional, and then slid a clean legal pad toward her. William, she said, you don't need to live like this anymore. We can build protections, real, ironclad protections. For you, for Helen, even for your grandchildren. The word grandchildren hit like a punch. Emma and Lucas, bright-eyed, innocent, already pulled into a war they didn't choose. I pictured Emma's gap-toothed smile, Lucas clutching his toy truck, both of them too young to understand why Grandpa suddenly stopped visiting. That thought nearly broke me. But Ms. Roberts kept going, her voice cutting through my grief like steel. First, we amend your will. Every dollar intended for Michael will be rerouted into an educational trust for the children. He will never touch a cent. College, tutoring, books, that money will be there, but only for them. Second, we file for a restraining order. After the package and the threats, you have more than enough grounds. From now on, any intimidation becomes a criminal matter. I nodded slowly, each word striking deeper than the last. This wasn't just paperwork. This was war in ink and signatures. That afternoon, I signed my name more times than I could count. Each page carried the weight of decades, 40 years of work, 35 of sacrifice, countless sleepless nights. I pressed my pen down harder than necessary, as though the ink itself needed to know this was final. When it was done, Ms. Roberts gathered the documents with precise hands. Within the week, it will all be official. By tomorrow, the restraining order will be served. As Helen and I walked out of that office, I felt taller. Not because the burden was gone, but because for the first time, it was no longer mine alone to carry. The law was on my side now. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No buzzing phone, no messages marked urgent, no door slamming open with Michael demanding another check. Helen poured tea, her hands steady again. She looked across the table at me and whispered, "You saved us." I wanted to believe it was over. But the storm had one more wave. 3 days later, Michael showed up again, pounding at the door. This time, I didn't open it. Through the window, I saw the paper in his hand, the restraining order, already served. He crumpled it, threw it on the porch, and shouted until his voice broke. "You'll pay for this, Dad! You think you can erase me? You can't erase your own son!" But the truth is, I already had. I didn't even respond. I dialed the police, gave them my name and address, and within minutes a cruiser pulled into the driveway. The officers didn't argue. They escorted him away, Lena shouting curses from the car. I stood in the window, Helen's hand on my shoulder, and felt no guilt, only clarity. In the weeks that followed, silence became our salvation. Each morning I woke to the sound of birds instead of phone calls. Each evening Helen and I shared dinner without tension crackling in the air. Life became small again, manageable, beautiful in its simplicity. But the lesson didn't come quietly. It came like thunder. For years I thought love meant giving without limits. But that wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of losing him. Fear of being alone. And fear had kept me chained. The box broke those chains. Michael thought he was sending me a threat. What he really sent was a mirror. A reflection of who he had become and who I had let myself be. That version of me ended the moment I signed those papers. Now, when I think of Emma and Lucas, I don't picture pawns in their father's game. I picture young adults walking across a graduation stage, holding diplomas, their futures secured not by manipulation, but by planning, by love that bypassed the broken generation in between. And Michael? He will find other targets, other excuses, other people to blame. That is his path, not mine. On Father's Day, I didn't get ties or cards or breakfast in bed. I got a box filled with claws and squeals, a package meant to terrify me. But it did something else. It woke me up. To every parent listening, hear me. Love is not weakness. Love is not a blank check. Love is boundaries. Love is saying no, even when your heart aches to say yes. Love is choosing peace over poison, dignity over dysfunction. I will always love the boy Michael used to be, the boy who once slipped his hand into mine, who once called me the best dad in the world. But the man he has chosen to become, that man has no claim over me anymore. I didn't lose my son. He lost me. Sometimes The hardest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or on battlefields. They're fought around dinner tables, in living rooms, between people who share the same blood. I didn't choose this war, but I chose how it would end. And what I learned is this: love without respect will crush you. Sacrifice without boundaries will hollow you out, and silence in the face of injustice will steal your dignity. We all carry scars from family, some visible, some buried deep. But scars are proof we survived. Proof we found the strength to say, enough. So if you've ever felt trapped by the people you love most, remember this: you are not alone. Choosing peace over chaos, honor over manipulation, is not betrayal. It's survival. It's courage. And sometimes, it's the only way forward. That is what Father's Day taught me. Not with a tie, not with a card, but with a box that broke me free. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and share this channel. And tell us in the comments, what lesson has life taught you that you'll never forget?